share it if we need to later. All right. Well, we just wanted to get together and talk real quickly about some online strategies that retailers could use during this time. I know I'm getting a lot of questions from state coordinators. So those of you that don't know me, I'm Ben Muldrow with Arnett Muldrow and Associates. We're an urban planning firm based out of Greenville, South Carolina. I live in Milford, Delaware, and kind of lead up our Mid-Atlantic operations. And I am joined today with my middle brother, Chris Muldrow from Ramble Type in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And Chris works with businesses of all size. He works with tourism entities and community governments and tourism attractions. And so has kind of seen every angle of the role that technology can play in helping a business to connect with its customers. And I just wanted to take an opportunity today to ask you a couple questions, if you don't mind, on what businesses should be doing. And I know we're definitely, we hear the phrase uncharted territory a lot, but I think that as everything continues to change and evolve, there definitely are opportunities for businesses to be proactive and try to capture some revenue as people are still trying to figure out how to move forward with their daily lives. So I guess from your standpoint down in Fredericksburg, what are you seeing? And as people are asking you questions, what's kind of that first recommendation you're making to business owners?
Sure. So I think it's best to start by pointing out, been doing this online stuff a long time, and there are, in the history of us sort of doing stuff online, there have been sort of key watershed events where you have a huge event that has a huge effect on a lot of people. Unfortunately, a lot of the events are negative ones, but the aftermath it often results in businesses doing business very differently because the technology that was in place at the time sort of merges with the needs in the time of the event. The last huge one of those we saw was 9/11, but this is shaping up to be another one where I really think businesses are going to be doing things very differently, starting right now and moving on into the future. So what I'm seeing right now for most of the people that I'm talking to is sort of some key points. Key point number one is obviously we're trying to do business with minimal human contact. They're here in Virginia, they're trying to discourage gatherings of more than 10 people or more. And so even in stores, they're saying you don't want 10 people in a closed down, tight retail environment or a restaurant. And so what we're seeing here is lots and lots of businesses are moving to a curbside delivery. So you order or call in an order, they're packaging the order, bagging it up, and you either go in and get it at the counter, or what I'm seeing here, and I also heard from a colleague of mine out in the Portland, Oregon area, is they will put it outside. And in fact, I can't remember what community he was talking about, but they have the restaurants are putting tents in front of the restaurants, so little easy up tents. And so what's happening is when you order, you say, "Hey, I'm almost there," and they take the bag of food out, they put it on a table under the tent, and they go back inside. And so you just go and grab your order from the tent and walk out. And he said it's kind of created in two situations. Number one, it's reducing the human contact, which is something that people are aiming for. But the other thing is you're driving through town, you see these tents, and hey, so-and-so Mexican restaurant, so-and-so, Irish bar or whatever, they are doing this. They are doing this curbside delivery of food. So it's a visual cue as you're driving through town. So that's something that I'm seeing a lot. We're obviously seeing a lot of people who are either doing delivery through some of the delivery services, or they're doing their own delivery, limited area delivery, 5-mile radius from the shop. And part of the reason they're able to do that is because they're not people coming in the store. They're trying to keep people employed. And so what they're doing is they're employing them and driving this stuff and doing deliveries.
Are you seeing any kind of movement? Like, are we seeing like automatic growth in our DoorDashes and Uber Eats and that kind of stuff? Or do you find more that they're just trying to kind of quickly throw together their own localized solution and still having to tell the customer how to remember to find them? Do you know what I mean? Like instead of kind of going through that platform approval process, they're just kind of crafting a solution for themselves.
So what I'm seeing right now, and I don't have a ton of data on this, but what I'm seeing right now is the people who were not doing one of the services before are trying to sort of build their own thing. But I also have some people who were using a service who are trying to do their own as well, because they're trying to get some hours for the people who are working for them. And so I just saw one earlier, a burger place here in town, who basically said, we use a delivery service, but what we'd really like you to do is come by and pick it up.
Right.
They've got a reserved parking spot. You can go pull in and go into the spot. I went to, now it was a fast food place. So I went to a fast food place today that switched over to doing carry out. They've closed the whole location down, and I noticed they had wooden posts in every parking space in the lot, and they've got numbered posts, so you can say, I'm space number 3, you can go deliver it to me. I'm seeing that too.
Gotcha. I did notice where DoorDash has integrated a no contact delivery checkbox, so that as you make your order, you can just approve that they can just leave it at the door and go.
Right.
And then just seeing some cool creative things on the ground level. Joe Borgstrom with Place in Maine out of Michigan shared a great just example from a local pizza place that was, instead of just selling you a pizza, you could call, order ahead, come by, pick up the pizza box. It would have dough, sauce, cheese, and literally it turned it into an activity where you could make your pizza at home.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So some of the restaurants here in Fredericksburg are also doing grocery pickup. And I think that I haven't had a chance to talk to them yet, but I think that part of the reasoning there is they're getting their suppliers to bring them in stuff that it might be hard to get at the grocery store, because we are having shortages. And so if you can go to the local restaurant and say, I'm going to go pick up my dinner, but also I'm going to get, some beef or even paper supplies. I don't know if they've got toilet paper available or not, but
right.
But getting supplies, because they're basically ordering that stuff in and then turning around and reselling it. So that was an interesting thing that I'm seeing from a restaurant here in town. Let's talk a little bit about the sort of the digital side of the equation.
Yeah.
So some of the businesses here already had commerce in place, but it was geared towards shipping. They had local pickup as an option, but it wasn't necessarily what they were used to doing. Some of them didn't have local delivery at all as an option. It was only ship out, and they didn't really have the idea of bagging it up and packaging it and having it waiting for you there at the store. So one of the things I'm certainly urging all of my folks to do is, if you don't have local pickup available as a shipping option on your current e-commerce store, you need to do that. Another thing, though, is figuring out the shipping. If you are still doing shipping, most of the shipping services are still running. And so making sure that you've got some sane shipping prices for local. Most of these e-commerce platforms, and the one that we use generally is WooCommerce, which is a WordPress platform, they allow you to do zoned shipping zones. So I can ship for a different price to my local zip code or set of local zip codes than I can to, California, for instance.
Right.
What a lot of people have done before this all happened was they just had one zone. They had United States was a zone, and then everybody else, so they could cover their international shipping. With zoning, you can say, so I'm in zip code 22401. I can say in the 22401, I've got a totally different shipping price available. And so that's one thing that you can do. And here's a cool thing you can do when you do that.
Yeah.
You can do local delivery, and you can
right. Do it almost like a courier charge.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've got folks who are working for you and you want them to start running, bags of candy to your customers in your 5-mile radius, if you set up your shipping zone inside of WooCommerce to have that local zone, you can do that. Now, here's the trick. The granularity of that zone is to the tightest it can get right now, at least in WooCommerce, is zip code. And so some of our zip codes are very large. It's just the way the Virginia's post offices are set up and where they are, at least here in Fredericksburg. So for us, you could conceivably put a zip in there and then have somebody order something, and it's going to be a 30-minute drive. Well, that may be overstating it, but it's a fairly long drive away. And so you're going to have to put some sort of notice on your site that says, look, this is where we're delivering. And you have to be ready to call them and say, I can't get out to you today. You're too far away. Can you come in and pick it up? That sort of thing.
Gotcha.
So people are going to have to, what I'm finding is people who had sort of gotten the e-commerce and they hadn't really dug into how it works. They're just kind of doing their thing. Sorry, the train is going by. There's Amtrak. It's still running.
Still running, yeah.
But what they're having to do a little bit more of is learn how to do a refund because of delivery issues and that sort of thing. Learn a little bit more about how shipping works. So, a thing about shipping. This is a little trick I tell people because shipping is really complex. Go to your local post office. Go pick up a free every one of the sizes of U.S. priority mailboxes. So there's a small, a medium, and a large. Go get the small and medium and large and bring one of each of those back to your store. Pop those boxes open and start trying your merch in those boxes.
Right.
Because then what you can do is create a very simple flat rate shipping system in your store. And you can say, hey, yeah, that's a large box, that's a small box, that's a medium box. What I find is a lot of people get wrapped around the axle on trying to figure out shipping, and they get way, way down in the weeds. And here's what I tell everybody. You're going to win some and lose some when you ship. You're going to ship some products and you're going to eat your shipping, and you're going to ship other products. You're going to make a little bit of money on the shipping just because of how that works. What you need to do is make it easy on yourself, especially right now. If you try to get too complex, it's going to be really, really tricky and hard for you. There are plugins that will go and hook to FedEx and to UPS and use their shipping calculators. But the problem with that is you've got to take all your inventory and measure dimensions. You got to figure out how long, wide, and heavy they are. Once you put that in the system, those calculators work. If you're not willing to put that in the system, that's not going to work.
Gotcha. So again, that was WooCommerce, WOO Commerce, and that's e-commerce plugin that works with the WordPress platform.
Yeah, so if you're on WordPress, WooCommerce by itself is free.
Okay, great.
There are add-ons that you can add to do all kinds of stuff. But the base thing of WooCommerce is a free plugin. And then you have to hook it to a payment processor. You don't get payment processing built in. So you got to decide who are you going to use to do that. You're either going to be using PayPal. We like Stripe. Stripe is another service out there. If you're Square, if you're doing Square for your point of sale, Square has a plugin that works with WooCommerce. So you can have one, you can have one system that you do with point of sale and with your local system. There are plugins for all sorts of other payment processors. But frankly, if you are trying to get something up fast and you have a WordPress site, my recommendation would be go install WooCommerce. You can download it straight in there. Go to either Stripe or PayPal and get an account. And worry about your merchant account and all that other junk later. If you want to get going fast, you can have a Stripe account up in probably less than half an hour. Doing all the back and forth emails and approvals and all that junk you've got to do and get that running.
Okay. So what about, we talked about restaurants, we talked about the kind of the transactional nature of the web, but what about with our downtown retailers, the businesses? I mean, we've got a friend of ours over in Greenwood, Delaware that owns a kind of an antiques and vintage and they're producing their own products as well. But what are some ideas that they should be using when customers are no longer coming into the physical store? What are some things they should be thinking about sharing product and kind of stoking some of that desire to buy while people are trapped in their homes?
Right. So I tell people, when you're doing this stuff, when you're doing this online commerce, you really need to have two modes of operation. You've got to have your farming mode and your hunting mode.
Hmm.
So let me talk about farming mode first,
Okay.
and then I'll talk about hunting mode. So when I say farming mode, what I mean is you are trying to generate additional revenue from customers that you've done business with before. Um, so when you're in farming mode, you are doing things like sending an email newsletter out to people on a regular basis. You are posting to your Facebook page. Um, and I call that farming mode because you probably don't have them on your Facebook page or in your email in your email database unless you've done business with them before. And by the way, if you don't have an email database and a system to send emails to people who are doing business with you, you need to just drop everything, turn off your computer, and go do that right now. Um,
Gotcha.
but but once you've got that list and you've got those channels, you've got that Facebook channel, Instagram channel, email channel. One of the things I find most effective is photos and descriptions of product.
Okay.
Especially if you're somebody who's got unique product, spend a little time to talk about 2 or 3 of the products that you've got in your collection. Send that email out, put that post up on Facebook, let people see what you've got.
Okay.
And do it though in not a don't shotgun it. Do it
Mhm.
in a trickle. Okay, flow that stuff through. And
Gotcha.
because if you put 30 products up in an email or on Facebook, people are going to drown in that. You want them to see a couple of things. So whether you're a retailer selling antiques and you're like, I think I know the place that you're talking about because I think I've
Yeah.
been there before.
We might have put on Russian furs there.
We may have possibly put on Russian furs there.
Right.
Yeah, that is
Right.
exactly right. But there were some very cool things like a vintage games, board
Mm.
games. So you put the picture of the vintage board game up. You write 2 or 3 sentences about it. You make sure that when you put it on your MailChimp newsletter or your Constant Contact newsletter, that the link you have under it goes to that product, not to your homepage. You should be deep linking every time you do one of these products. When I click that link, I want to see that product. Why do I say that? Because our goal is for them to buy. And so if they saw it and they were interested enough to go look at it, we want them to be there where they've got the ability to buy as quickly as they can. And you've got that flow going through to your existing customers.
Gotcha.
So that's farming. Hunting, you need to be doing a very similar thing, but you need to be going through different channels. You're not going to get outside people by just posting it on your own Facebook page because guess what? They're not following you already.
Right.
So we're doing a lot right now. It's funny. I actually just had somebody, a service provider, in the office right before we got on here, who does handyman work and renovation work, and we were talking about a campaign for them right now in this downturn. Just like it's affecting retailers, it's affecting people who are doing services because people don't necessarily want them in the house.
Right.
We're having a conversation about that. So we have sort of a four-pronged ad strategy. Okay, one is Google AdWords. So Google AdWords, the short story on that is you can keyword target and geographically target people, particularly when they're searching for a specific thing.
Gotcha.
And so here's a cool thing about Google AdWords, and I'll tell you a little story about a company that I work with here. They sell Virginia products, products made in Virginia. There's a way through WooCommerce, Shopify, some of the other shopping platforms to generate a product feed. Basically what it does is it takes your whole catalog and it generates this feed, and you can go to Google AdWords and you can put that feed in Google AdWords. And what
Gotcha.
it does is when the ads run, if I'm searching for a specific thing, it will use that feed and it will show me that specific thing. So if it's a certain kind of kayak, or a backpack or that kind of thing. Um, so that is a hugely effective way to advertise on Google. And so this place that has made in Virginia items, they sell herring roe. So fish eggs,
Right, right.
little jars of herring roe. They get it downriver on the Rappahannock. I think this comes from the Rappahannock. And they've got these little jars, and I'm sure that sometime in the past, somebody said, hey, do you have herring roe? They bought a jar of it, they put it on there. So we went through, we took pictures of all their food product, we put it, and we got this whole catalog, and we fed that catalog into Google. So now if you're searching for herring roe, and you can probably do this right now, if you search for herring roe online, you may get them as a result. If you search for herring roe, particularly if you're near me, you get this store as the top result. And
Gotcha.
they've sold more herring roe in the past 2 months. We put that product up right before Christmas. They've sold more herring roe since Christmas than they have basically the whole time they've had a herring roe in the shop.
Wow.
And it's because people are searching for very specific things. So that particular shop, we just put most of their wine inventory up, and it's all Virginia wine. So if you're searching not just for Virginia wine, but for Barboursville, a Barboursville sparkling wine, well, their product, Barboursville sparkling wine, is in the catalog, which means that when you search for that, they're much more likely to be higher up in the search. So that's a way to get a new customer in the door to do e-commerce with you or walk-in business, sending things out.
That's cool. Speaking of that, one thing I wanted to share with you, the governor of Delaware yesterday approved carry out alcohol sales for restaurants temporarily.
Okay.
So we've got a good friend of ours who owns a series of restaurants throughout Delaware, and they were advertising today that you can call in your order, and you can also tell them what beer you want, and they'll back it up. And so it is cool to see that there really is creativity, and there's a change in the way that we do business from the government side as well. Right. And with each one of those changes, it's going to unleash new opportunity for our businesses, but they have to be ready to seize that opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I love that. I love that hunting and farming mindset. I think that's probably a different way of thinking about it than some of our retailers maybe normally do. And I think about our family, and just yesterday I took 2 of our bikes and dropped them off at a local bike shop. Called them beforehand, said, you guys still open? They were like, yeah, we're doing service on stuff. So dropped off the bikes. They both needed new chains. Didn't have to talk to anybody. Could leave them out front. They pulled them up. They're ready for me to go back and pick up. And, so trying to find those no contact ways that you can still keep things moving forward. But we feel like, hey, being able to have bikes we can ride is probably an activity we need to make sure we're ready to green light. So I know they're staying busy with that kind of stuff, getting bikes repaired, doing kind of the seasonal checkups and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, are you seeing anything else from just kind of an overall creativity standpoint of ways that businesses that you come in contact with that are trying to continue to get revenue in as things are so weird?
We work with somebody who's got an outdoor retailer, and they have an interesting situation. I'm sure there are other businesses that run into this too. They have prohibitions on how they can sell certain brands. So there are certain brands, certain outdoor brands out there that the rules for doing online sales are pretty strict, and you have to have a certain amount of inventory set aside for it and that sort of thing. They're using a company, I believe, out of Texas called locally.com.
Yeah.
What Locally does is they are connected with a lot of these brands, and they have a scenario where you can search through Locally, see who has your product available, and then you can actually buy it and go pick up. It's designed to do pickup locally. And so it's interesting because we just got locally implemented on them a few weeks ago before
Cool.
all this happened. And so suddenly now they've got all of these different high-end, well, or popular outdoor brands that you can go pick up in the store. The other thing that they're doing is they're doing a gear garage. That's product that is, out of date, clearance, that sort of thing. They're actually allowed to sell that, even if it's under one of the brands that would normally be restricted if it's out of season or whatever. And so they've built that up, and they're actually doing commission sales too, for people. And so, imagine a scenario where you've got people who are having financial issues and they start trying to do the yard sale thing, but they've got maybe a nice bike or a nice piece of furniture or something like that. Imagine if you could drop that off at a retailer who's got a bigger audience, and they could do commission sales. So that's something you wouldn't normally think of from a new product retailer, but these guys have said, that's something we're willing to do, because it's a revenue stream for them, and it also helps their customers. Because if a customer comes in and sells an old kayak and then they turn around and buy a new kayak from you,
Exactly.
it's not a bad deal for everybody involved in that.
Cool.
So that's an area that I think we're seeing more of. We mentioned the restaurant doing the food, where they're selling groceries and that sort of thing. So that's another area where I think there's some innovation going on there. What I'm curious.
I pulled up that locally site as you're talking about it. How long is that process of setting that up? I mean, I see that, right now there are quite a few, like all of our Ace hardwares seem to be participating. So we're automatically getting product from our local Ace hardware stores in the region. How long would that take a retailer to get set up and then integrate some of their products into it?
I don't know the answer to that, because this store had actually signed up for it a while back and then got wrapped up in other things. And then we sort of finally got to it. I do know that you have to have brand approval from the brands themselves. And so if you already have a relationship with them, my understanding is that locally helps you in that process to get the brand approval. But even like the retailer that I know that I work with, we're sort of looking through and going, oh, here's a locally brand that we know is on locally, but that has not approved them yet. And so there is a little bit of back and forth there, but the technology side of it, I mean, it was pretty easy to set up. It was, I think we had it going in, a week or so, once I really was able to dig in and sort of, figure out where all the moving pieces were and how it works. It does plug into your website really easily. You don't really have to have a specific platform to use it. It's not WordPress specific or anything like that. The only complication with it is the payment through locally happens on this stream. So if you're doing other things that you're selling through this stream, you end up in a situation where a customer can't buy something from locally on the same ticket that they buy something from your gear garage, for instance. So that creates a little bit of a disconnect, but I don't think it's a deal breaker. I think customers are okay with. So that's how that goes. Another thing I was going to talk about before, that people don't realize they can do as much if they're a smaller retailer is. We're doing a whole lot more video advertising now, because TV is expensive, right? I mean, buying TV commercials is expensive. It always has been. I mean, it's gotten, a lot of the TV providers have gotten less expensive these days, but still. Buying into streaming services, though, so Hulu, any sci-fi.com, anybody who streams TV and runs commercials, it's not a killer to buy into those services now. The cost per thousand, so that's the number that we use. Basically, cost per thousand is how much money do I have to spend to get 1,000 views on an ad or a commercial. That's kind of the coin of the realm that we use to figure out how much ads cost. So your cost per thousand on video advertising is higher than would be buying a banner ad. And part of that's because there's less video inventory than there is banner ad inventory. But the cool thing about this is that people respond very well to video. You tend to get a better reaction rate. You have more time to tell your story. Usually these
Right.
ads are 15 seconds, though you can go up to a 30-second. Recommend 15, not 30, because
Yeah.
retention is better with 15. But it is possible to buy these things at a lot lower spend than you might think. So I was just telling somebody today, my recommendation is you probably don't want to go any lower than about $2,000 a month. But for $2,000 a month, you could do a video buy. And so you could buy into Hulu. We call it OTT, so over the top, but that just is streaming advertising. So you
Right.
can buy OTT, and you can also buy what we call pre-roll on YouTube. So that's the 15-second ad you see before you watch something on YouTube.
Right.
You can buy that, and that advertising you can target geographically. You can target by behavior. You can do some targeting with the Hulus and streaming services, but with the YouTube stuff and that pre-roll, you can really, really target. So you
Gotcha.
can say, I want people who are interested in running and are doing that.
Gotcha.
One other thing that people are doing here, and I don't know if you're seeing it there too, is they're really pushing gift cards. So they're
Mhm.
basically saying, buy a gift card from me now and then come in and shop with it when you get, when things clear up.
Right.
Because what they're trying to do is get those gift cards in as cash flow.
Sure.
And then they know, people come in and redeem. But as we know, that when somebody buys a gift card, many, many times they spend more than the card is worth
Right.
when they come back in. And so I'm seeing a lot of people pushing that. And again,
I feel like that goodwill window is very short lived. I think it's one of those things where it's like, in the very front end of this, there's that kind of desire to help, but it's not going to be very long before people are like, I'm only spending my money on things that I can get.
right. No, I think you're
You know?
right. I think you're right. So I do think that that's got a limited lifetime. I do think it's a stopgap.
Right.
And I do think that ultimately you're going to need a way to say, we've got to figure out a way to do business longer term. So, if you're the bike shop, you're talking about the repairs at the bike shop. Does the bike shop institute a try it out period where you go pick up the bike and you can go ride the thing, and then you drop it back off and they go pick it up, with gloves on, go pick it
Right.
up and wipe it down, and then they can say, hey, do you want it, and do that whole transaction, that whole tryout transaction that way.
Yeah.
um, I do think there's possibilities there.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I think technology is going to play such an unbelievable role in both keeping people occupied during this time, but also just everything from, the content that's going to be created and the discovery of new platforms. I'm not sure how close you've been able to keep your finger on it, but are they saying anything about shifting trends of digital usage with people getting stuck at home? Is there any kind of surprise movement that we're seeing, or right now are we just kind of seeing overall growth in the platforms that people were already familiar with?
Yeah, I'm not seeing. That's a really good question. So at 9/11, there were platform growth significantly in some areas of, like I would argue that that's when you started seeing sort of a more current, fresh news sort of approach to things. People wanted to get things up immediately. I'm not seeing anything significant yet that's sort of a new platform adoption.
Right.
Um, I think what I'm seeing right now is more people who it's the people. That for a long time there were people who like just didn't have a website, and then
Right.
eventually said, I got to have a website.
Right.
And I think that what we're going to see this time is people who had a website but were not doing e-commerce, but yet they were a retailer or they were a restaurant, or they were selling product, or selling transactions that were small recurable transactions, not not a tax advisor or a lawyer or that kind of thing, but people who have transactions that they're running. I think that what we're going to see, the fallout here is going to be, and I mean, this is going to be kind of grim, but I think that the fallout here is this is going to be a situation where you either decide to go down that road or you're going to feel the effects significantly.
Gotcha.
If you insist on not doing digital business, you're gonna get hurt. And I mean, even with some of this stuff with restaurants doing curbside, I was just talking about this to somebody today, and I mean, this is, I'm getting older,
Right.
but I don't like. Given my preference, I would rather go and fill out an online form and order something online than I would talk to you on the phone. So if I
Right.
have to choose between two barbecue restaurants and one lets me order online and one lets me call on the phone, and that's all I can do, guess what? The guy who does the online ordering is going to get my order. And my
Right.
suspicion is there are a lot of people younger than me who are, that times 1,000.
Even if he's mustard based instead of vinegar based.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm completely with you. And it's one of those things where, like, Lee and I keep talking about it around the house. It's like all of these tasks that we didn't have time to do before.
Right.
And guess what? Now we have time. And I can't agree more, Chris. I think that this could be that event that you either digitize your inventory or you don't. You either move to the 21st century where you're able to sell online real time, or you don't. And it will be interesting if we start to see some of the bigger platforms. I've always wondered whether Amazon is going to sit there and say, hey, what if we become the back end of the American merchant? And it'll be really interesting, depending on the time frame here, to see whether there is new retail-oriented solutions that come out because of the pent-up, I guess, transactional change that happens because of this pandemic. So I think it'll definitely be interesting to see. But I want to thank you for taking the time to talk about this stuff. Anything you want to say before we wrap up?
I think that's it. I mean, I think we're what we're doing right now. So I run a local news site here in Fredericksburg too, and so we put just the other day, I basically told local retailers, I posted on our site, like, if you are doing something special, if you're a restaurant or a retailer and you're doing curbside, you're doing takeout, you're doing delivery, I basically said, send me an ad. I'm going to run it for free on my news site. And I've got a little section on it where, I'm doing outbound links. But, something that you said was interesting, that goodwill only lasts for so long, even for me. It's like, I'm going to do this for you, but at some point, you got to make sure your business is able to support it. You got to make sure that you're there and ready to support this stuff. So I've like sent a couple ads back and said, you haven't said what you're doing. You haven't said whether you're doing curbside or takeout. You just sent me a picture and it doesn't say what you're doing. I'm like, you got to rethink. You got to come back and tell me what you're offering to people in order to make this work.
Right.
And I think, we're, from a web development standpoint, we're like looking right now, trying to figure out, like, how can we, is there a way, and we think there is there a way for us to do sort of a bare bones commerce site for somebody at a low price point, knowing that our goal is get it up and live fast. Mm-hmm. So it's got limited functionality as far as how your shipping's set up and that kind of thing. But the plus side is you get it up and running quickly.
Right.
And you know what? This is the thing about technology that I find frustrating, but also, helps me sometimes. You don't have to wrap technology around everything. If you've got a system that's not ideal and you've got some people in the back who can go and say, hey, this order's got to go this way, and we got to do that by hand. You got to make those sacrifices. You got to make those compromises right now. And you can sort the technology out and make it smoother later.
Exactly.
But you got to get something in place now.
Gotcha. Well, great. Well, Chris, thank you so much. Again, that's Chris Muldrow, the founder of Ramble Type. You can find out more about Chris and Ramble Type at rambletype.com, RAMBLETYPE.com. And we're going to continue to have interviews and talk with folks. And Chris, please, let's get back together if we find that information changes or there's more that our retailers need to know. But I appreciate you spending 30 or 45 minutes with me to talk, and we'll keep tackling it together.
Tell the kids I said hi.
All right, we'll do. Have a good one. We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.